Hi everyone, welcome to the debate exhibition for NOVED 2023. In this exhibition, we're going to be debating under the motion that reads, "This House opposes the glorification of career success." Before your speech, make sure you have tested if you're audible or not. State your preferred PRI methods, and if you would like to, your preferred pronouns as well, and count down before your speech begins. So without further ado, we call upon the Prime Minister to start today's debate. Here.
Great. Hi, am I audible?
Yep, you're loud and clear.
All right, thank you. For Filipino eyes, I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. The prerequisite of an ideal life where people could have a fine mentality yet a very productive work at the same time is not going to be achieved by the glorification of career success. Opposition bench is evil to undermines one value of success and it should not be standardized whatsoever. So proud to stand under OG. Let's establish what our role looks like under OG. Two things in my setup. First, let's establish the status quo, right? The glorification of career exists where everyone will be very constant on work and materialistic things, whether it is like titles, monies, whatsoever. There will be becoming very stressed out, and all of their goals will be standardized based on their works and what their income and whatever that is that can be counted materialistically. But then secondly, we also see that a lot of people actually opt into their own type of success. People have their own choices when it comes to their own happiness, and people still need leisure time and have its own maximum capacity, right? Why do we think this is problematic then? Firstly, this actually backlashes your own principle of humanity and how you actually have your own parameter of success in life. But then secondly, how this can furthermore hinders your actual further progress of doing anything in your life, right? One point of framing then. We want a world where career success is still validated. It does not mean that under OG, then completely everyone will not have the motivation to work because irrationality for everyone will still exist. They will still be able to survive. There's still going to be, working hard for them to meet, for them to gain money whatsoever. And everyone still can achieve these goals and etc. We just don't want to make it by the glorification, how this glorification creates a certain narrative that this is the only success that you will be able to count in life, or this is the only validated success in life. Moving on to my substantive then, I'll be talking about two things here later on. First, on the principle level, why do we think that is unjust? Like, let's define how the ideal life is under Goji then. We want a humanity, we want a life with a balanced life of being productive as well as actually enjoying life in itself. What does this implies? What does this implies to? A, we want to use all of our resources, talent, and etc. to actually work with what we can. I think this is already pretty self-explanatory. Using whatever that is that we have, our resources and our dreams, our goal, whatever that is, we try to make that into a source of income. It would be very nice if we can use that as a source of work. But then B, we also want an ideal life that actually enjoyable, a successful life. The parameter of a successful life here is those that can achieve the equality in life and those that are opt into choosing whatever that they want. They can decide their own successes on whether it is things that you can count, whether it is based on income or it is whether based on your own happiness or how you can contribute to the society, how you can actually help your parents, for example. So we would let everyone going to be able to decide whatever that is that they want to be counting as success, right? Let's compare this to how a status quo looks like. We see first this overall glorification of this work-oriented process where it will pressure to measure everyone's success level based on whatever that is that you have achieved at works, whether incomes, title, trophies, whatsoever. And then secondly, people opt to pursue different career. Some chooses some more low maintenance jobs, some choose to become like housewife, for example, or those that only wants to prolong their parents' company, for example. So then, what do we think? What is the premise then? First, we think it is unjust because you're actually ruining the ideas of someone's success. You're essentially undermining here. But then, secondly, it is hindering you to develop as a person, as how you're already very limiting it since the get go. Secondly, here practicals. I have 3 layers. First, how this can actually overemphasize on materialism. This is very likely because of this glorification already exists, meaning that everyone's goal in life is going to focus on this materialistic thing. But why is it bad? First, people care more about all of these material things such as money and whatsoever rather than own personal growth, rather their own relationships. Meaning that now their goals in life there is already all of these money and etc. It'll be very likely for them to do a lot of these illegal ways for them to be able to reach this career success, whether it's such manipulation, whether it is for them whatever that is that they can gain to simply like gain their steps to become a boss, for example. Because society already frame it that way. The society already frame this valid success as those who can achieve all of these titles, for example. And so of course people would want to look successful that way way because they do not want the people that are undermined since the get-go. So then, people would, do whatever that is that they can do to get here, right? But then secondly, a lot of these mental health issues eventually still come up because you're only constantly working on like funding money, for example. You have no time to leisure, even if you understand that probably yourself is already are not, that yourself probably are not in your, maximum stamina, for example. You realize that probably furthermore, you cannot really enjoy working whatsoever. However, because you're already very terrified of the glorification that exists, because you're so scared that people would demonize you and people would bully you simply because you're not success under their narrative that exists, then you simply have to force yourself, in which you realize that at the end of the day, the outcome of this is not going to be maximized either because you're not even in your best stamina as well, right? But then secondly here, regarding social discrimination, like I've mentioned, glorification creates certain standards of success, like I mentioned. Not everyone understand that not everyone have the same opportunities when it comes to, for example, marginalized communities or those that are probably under the poverty level, those that probably have different steps on the way, those that them or it's just simply those that probably have a lot of these resources, but they just prefer to work under these low maintenance job, like I've mentioned. This glorification creates a society pressure in a way demonize and undermine these people simply because you're not achieving the same amount. This could actually lead to like a systemic inequality in society because now everyone could not pursue whatever that they want, leading to more and more people, for example, they could get depressed or for them to become jobless because the moment they want to pursue whatever that is, like these low maintenance jobs, whether it's to pursue their parents a job or whether for them to become a housewife, because the people already bully them so bad, then they would simply decide, oh, you know what, I might not do this because people do not see it as a valid success, in which we see that this is very, very evil. But then before I move on to next one, feel eyes from anybody. All right.
In this very highly capitalistic world, if you keep denying the importance of being or having a career success, do you think it's going to be useful for an individual?
All right, thank you. Well, like I mentioned in my framing, we doesn't necessarily say that now people will have no thrive for perfection or to money because people still have rationality exists. And I'll explain that later on in my preemptive story. But then moving on to my third layer then. Harm towards all of these new workers that are in company. Glorification creates the narrative that one success and count is already counted by these titles and all that, right? It is harmful for all of these new workers that probably has just been started working, those that probably have its own challenges because everyone's starting point is already very much different and everyone's process is different. They would be bullied, they would be discriminated simply because, oh, you know what, you're not as fast to reach this certain title as someone. In which we realize that everyone that has been, reaching all of these titles and everyone who's been on top have been through so much struggles as well. This glorification makes it seems as if, oh, you know what, for them to be able to reach this is something very easy. And so everyone can reach that and then everyone can achieve this certain level of success. In which you think it is simply wrong because these people have been through so much as well. And for them to become like that is simply not an easy way. And so it is not right for us to simply say like, oh, you know what, you're not successful, you're not successful, in which everyone's already successful in their own step of the way to begin with. Moving on to my third argument then, as preemptives. They would probably say regarding how companies would have better, like what the people mentioned, because you would focus on the human resources and everyone would thrive for money, for example. Number one, we think that is very evil if you only want them to be productive because you cannot force, you have to motivate. I don't know why they frame it that way. Secondly, exactly in our opposition, you're only so hard to pursue this because you're on certain pressures, right? People would not work unless people would be bullied, people would be discriminated, and they will have no desire to work whatsoever. And people still have rationality to survive, whether it's to find ways to make money and all that. For those reasons, propose.
We thank the Prime Minister for that fine speech. To start, oppositions have the House. We call upon the Leader of the Opposition. Hear, hear.
Am I audible?
Yep, you're loud and clear.
Okay. My POI preferences are, please turn on the camera so I can see. And I will begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. Government has stated that their main argument, or their main 3 arguments, is the glorification will ruin ideas of someone's success, and then they will get materialistic, and they will get discriminated because they don't pass these essential standards of what would be career success. So that we say, it is true that they will get discriminated because they don't fit this glorification. But in this highly capitalistic society, they will get discriminated without the glorification anyway. For instance, in this world, one will have to succeed in order to actually survive in the world. And discrimination is not just because of the glorification of these careers. The problem where people feel pressure because they feel like they need to succeed is true, but it is already there, even without the glorification. So we believe that the glorification of career success should stay there. Career success is inherently a good thing. The glorification of achievements being a good thing, meaning that achievements should be glorified so that people can achieve more things. It increases their motivations. Even if it does pressure people, with or without the glorification, the competition for these achievements and this career success still exists. Getting rid of that glorification does not get rid of the pressure. And to the argument where people will get materialistic and they will do illegal things in order to POI.
Yep. You cannot argue that pressure exists with or without glorification, but at the same time, you say that glorification increase motivation because these two things are inherently contradicting each other.
Glorification of career success increases motivation because the glorification of career success is inherently a good thing. Therefore, the glorification of it is good.
Hi, just confirming, is the leader of opposition disconnected? Because I feel like she's freezing.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm stopping the timer at 3:59, so we'll wait for them to come back.
Okay, you got disconnected at 3:45. So whenever you're ready, you can count down and continue.
All right. My speech will continue in 3, 2, 1. The problem here is that people will feel pressured to achieve career success. But as I've stated before, or if it is disconnected, that pressure is already there because of the inherent stress of the career market's competitiveness. Therefore, that glorification will actually help them in pushing through this market's competitiveness, because if they see that end result, that, oh, the career that I could get if I will work harder, if I could beat all of my competitors, then they will maybe get more pressured, but also they will have a bigger chance at winning in the career market. Government has stated that this pressure is in fact a bad thing, and the glorification of it makes it, and the glorification of career success increases the pressure even further. But because of this career markets, because of how bad the career market is in the first place, because of how competitive it is, the pressure will increase by the glorification, yes, but as a matter of how humane it is, of how this pressure is a bad thing for the mental health of the people within it, that is actually because people feel the pressure like they need to succeed, they will in fact put more effort into succeeding and get and compete in a more cutthroat way. And this will actually benefit the career market because there will be a higher quality in its people. There will be more effort put into it. And that is why we oppose. That will be all for my speech. Thank you.
We thank the Leader of Opposition for that speech. To continue, we call upon the Deputy Prime Minister. Here.
Just want to make sure that I'm both visible and audible.
Yeah, you are both visible and audible.
Okay. The world that we live in dictates us a lot of things. That we should be positive all the time. That we should be thankful in any circumstances and any phase of life. That we should reach academic excellence. That we should reach certain level of success. All of those narrative teaches us one thing: to be a capitalism path that obeys the makers of the rules. Opening government realize this and oppose this heartily. Before going to my case, I'm going to clarify one thing that I think missed in opening opposition. What does career success setting in this debate? I think that career success, the narrative setting a real boundaries that you can access, that it needs to fulfill two main standards. Number one, you need to have a good money in the job. Number two, you have a good enjoyment and good happiness in the job. The thing is, not all jobs fulfill that. Some jobs are just so high pressure that even though you like it at first, you're probably going to be more stressed out in the future and hate it anyway. Some jobs are just from the very start that not happy and not going to be enjoyable at all. Some jobs are not fulfilling your good money, not having that enough high level level of salary, for example. That means the opening opposition need to concede. Not all jobs would fit into this position, would fit into this narrative. Hence, they need to defend that. Three things to bring here. First, I'm going to talk about happiness. Second, I'm going to talk about access to success in general, about the main reason why this narrative exists. Finally, going to talking about resources allocation. First, about happiness. I think just a quick framing was this debate, why this clash and this burden is important, because this is a priori from all debates. This is going to define what makes individual enjoy their job. What defines someone happy? Two characterization of opening your brain. Number one, that you have agency of your choice, that you rational everything that you do for yourself, and you understand that. Second, I think a basic understanding and principle of consent. What career success narrative tell you? Number one, that your job must make you happy psychologically. Number two, that the job must satisfy your life, anything that you need. The thing is, layer number one, this narrative is super shallow because the process of individuals to gain one job is not that simple. You get through all those capitalism structure, those trials in education or any external level in order to reach those careers. The competitive pressure to enter even one for applying in one job, for example. By the process itself, it proves to you it's so hard to define someone to enjoy the industry itself. This proves that the narrative is so false and so shallow that working by itself is never making somebody happy. Industry and capitalism makes things that you even enjoy from the very first place being unenjoyable by itself. Second of all, I think what's important is the scarcity. Scarcity. A lot of people work not to achieve career, but in order to survive, which is the most rotten analysis for why individuals work. But this narrative at the end overgeneralize individuals and overgeneralize everyone to have the same goal in corporate life. What does impact into? It impacts this narrative defines your happiness at the end of the day. The society would it impacts the way the society would validate and pursue yourself. The way your family would see your class in the family, for instance. The way your friends would treat you is highly dependent on this narrative. They're highly dependent on how this glorification exists. This is why this glorification is bad. Because majority of individuals are validated through this way. Because humans are just social beings, for instance. This is why, by the very mean individual's validation is not accessible. This narrative, regardless of your best case that you're gonna be success, because of any circumstances you're gonna be happy and enjoying the job, it's at the end not making you happy because this is not accessible. The second layer of this clash is going to say how this limits individual freedom. The premise is simple. Not all jobs fit into the standard of career success narrative. This is important because individuals in their life and the process of life have their personal priority. Somebody wants to prioritize their money. Somebody wants to prioritize their passion. Somebody don't want to prioritize both. Some people just want to prioritize one of them, or some people want to prioritize one of them. This depends on a lot of externalities. Your individuals and personal experience, your trauma, your family background define this as yourself. However, what the glorification do, it's motivating you, yes, into certain types of jobs, but also demonizing you to some other type of jobs. So at best, even if this makes somebody who opt into this glorification being validated and make somebody, for example, happy in their wording, this decision depends on externalities that don't make them inherently happy. Thus, they're not gonna be happy at all. But what is the comparative principle on our side of the house? On our side, sure, through the process, you're probably going to face some struggles, which is symmetrical. But what we have on our side is agency. What we have on our side is the choice that you get is not dependent on what society dictates you. That your job, that your decision is dependent on the experience that you have been through, that the things that you value in your life. And we think this is a valid reason that makes the individual inherently happy as a tipping point of the debate. Before going into my second burden, I'm going to take any POI from CEO.
Hi, let's say that I'm not following the glorification. Under your words, I will be bullied by society. How would I be bullied by society then? Can you explain?
As simple as you're being discriminated, as simple as you're in your family being judged and being compared with other kids, for instance, is already enough to show how you're gonna be bullied. Second burden then about access to success. The note on this case is that the narrative emphasizes, I think, more on economic incentive because there's other narrative in this world saying that money makes you happy. So a lot of this narrative are going to more emphasize on economic incentive. Number one, money is not accessible because money is designed with a limited number, so ensure that we're not failing in recession. That's why everybody's competing to access money and to get money. That means some people might lose in the competition. This means success is never for everyone, and we think this is bad. Second, career success is a game of privilege because elites design a world for lower class to work harder for the company, dreaming they will reach the same position as bosses. But in fact, they don't because a lot of capitalism system and a lot of system that hampers them. So by the system by itself, it's a toxic house nation for lower class while they limit the capacity to access those competitions. Why is this case important? Because the narrative target the lower class the most. Most of them are not accommodated with proper education or proper basic needs. That's why most of them are so easy to be internalized with motivation, sugar-coated speech whatsoever. Tailor a journey to career success is a lot of effort because their money that you take for education, their money to go into test minat bakat, capital and starting an art business, for example. So most likely you're going to sacrifice other resources for the lower classes in order to have this glamping narrative. So at best that you are successful on your side, this benefit will be so marginal and cherry picked, which is not a valid, which is a valid burden to provide OO. So a lot of people will be failing on their side of the house, and this narrative is super harmful for all those reasons. Pro.
We thank the Deputy Prime Minister for that speech. We continue with the Deputy Leader of Opposition. Here.
I just want to check if I'm audible.
Yeah, you're audible and visible.
All right. Give me a second. Okay. I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. I think the biggest problem of opening government is that they are being unfair. They say they want to oppose the glorification of career success simply because it makes it stressful and rip your agency to choose. To the point that, for example, if there is the presence of this glorification, people suddenly irrationally follow the glorification and force themselves to follow this particular narrative that is imposed by society. But when I POI them, they mention that people are rational not to deny the importance of being success, because at some degree, they agree that being success is crucial. Hence, people are that rational, like what they said. I think with or without the glorification of this, they are still going to be rational even under our house, right? Not irrational to the point that they overwork themselves and got into hospital and pay $500 hospital bills, for example, and so on and so forth. It means, ladies and gentlemen, if people are indeed irrational, of course, I will not compare my standard of success with NASA pilot, for example, because I know I'm not gonna make it. This is why under our side, we do not ask everyone to be doctors. We do not ask everyone to be NASA pilot. I think in this debate, we need to play in moderation. We are currently living in a world that is hyper competitive, we admit, where people reach their dreams to be as high as possible. The context of the debate is that the glorification is happening right now, where individuals are pushed to achieve as high as possible. But the question is that, should we deny that we are currently living in a hyper competitive world, or should we embrace it? Under opposition side of the house, we are going to embrace it, support the glorification of career success, right? So there are several contributions that I'm going to bring as Deputy Leader of Opposition. First, widen the glorification of success, career success includes positive process that is good for individuals. I think, ladies and gentlemen, to push someone to be successful is inherently a good thing, like what my leader of opposition has previously mentioned. It is not only because they need to achieve a certain standard of success, or all of you need to become a doctor, for example, but it is the message that you are achieving your dream. I think that currently, where profession becomes more diverse, for example, people are more open-minded. The reason why all stereotypes saying that becoming a doctor is successful is because back then, the only person who has big houses, for example, and a lot of properties are only doctors. And I think that this is the contextualization that OG forgot to mention. Right now, you can see authors having big houses. You can see news anchors having the highest apartment building in Kuningan, for example, and etc. Right? This is why the definition of success is now more modernized in the current status quo. If I don't become a doctor and you call me a failure, for example, and we are bullied, I don't think this is true in the current context of society, ladies and gentlemen, because even if I'm not a doctor, even if, for example, Andre is not a doctor, Andre is not bullied at the end of the day, right? So I don't think the context that OG is previously mentioned is true at the end of the day, right? So I think that more people not becoming doctors, and I think it's okay. I think there is a very exaggeration of context that is mentioned by the opening government side of the house. But not only that, I think that this is the second contribution, right? After, I straightened it up. Not only that, I think that to push someone to be successful is not all about becoming successful, but there is a process that comes with it. The trait of working hard, the trait of passion that an individual can show, for example, persistence and consistency. And I think that this is inherently a good thing and a good personality. Panels, what makes the environment toxic, like what opening government said, is not because the inherent presence of this narrative to be successful, but it is because the enforcement of this narrative is not followed by the supporting facilities to support this individual achieving what is constructed by the society. People do not become stressful because they are required to be success. They become stressed because they are forced to achieve high, but not give the necessary facilities to support them. Under our side of the house, I think that the presence, the reasoning behind as to why education charity exists, for example, government subsidy exists, for example, or company scholarship, this is all based on one premise that everyone should excel, that everyone should be an excellent individual. This is why people are not going to be stressful under our side of the house, simply because the facilities that they need to achieve the excellent society require them to achieve, for example, exist under our side of the house, ladies and gentlemen. So I think that we have proven you two things, right? Number one, I think that the standardization of success is currently more modernized in the current status quo. Under our side, just because we want you to be successful does not mean we are going to limit your choice to be whoever you want to be. If you want to be a successful debater, for example, then you can go for it. But if you, for example, want to be a doctor, then please go for it. This is the reason why we push you, glorify the narrative for you to be successful in your own department, ladies and gentlemen, because it is not only just you achieving your success, but I think that there is inherently a process that is good for an individual to understand, ladies and gentlemen. The current status quo also, okay, before I proceed, yeah.
My parents just came in and asked, when will I get a proper job? And why do we have that why do we need that glorification to have the working hard traits? Isn't that inherent by your own speech?
I don't necessarily think that that is something that is inherent because what exists in the current status quo. For example, people wants to be successful, but I think that there should be a gear that needs to be able to push them to not just being average, but to be successful at the end of the day, right? But I think that the trait that we want to impose them is not because the standard of them achieving success, but I think that by becoming a success, there are a lot of process that makes you grow as a person, makes you to be more persistent, more consistent, and so on and so forth. And I think that this is the reason why we glorify the narrative of career success, because I think that the trait, personality, the journey that comes with it is something that is very necessary. Look, to live, ladies and gentlemen, is hard. And I think that this will answer the POI coming from Andre, right? To live is hard. We have a lot of, for example, obstacles or challenges when we are trying to achieve our dreams. But I think that this particular message should continuously being glorified so that it can be listened by a lot of people also continuously. That even if there are challenges, for example, but I think that you will achieve your success at the end of the day. And this is what people keeps pushing forward, because I think that without this clarification of narrative, people will just give up in the middle of the way. And I don't think that this is something that we want. Very proud to stand under team opposition.
We thank the Deputy Leader of Opposition for that speech, and that wraps up the first half of this debate. To start the closing half, we call upon the member for the government. Here.
Use the chat box or raise hand feature if you want to offer POI. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. By OO's logic, we just have to work hard. We just have to push these people to work hard, because apparently working hard is not something that is inherent, even though that they conceded themselves that the word requires people to work hard. The word is harsh, that requires people to work hard, but hey, let's give them a push because that's inherently good and we have to push them. And hence, suddenly, poof, abracadabra, suddenly they succeeded in life. That is a huge jump of logic, and that's where OO cannot win this debate. Okay, just to put into context, right? Here's the thing. In regards to whether or not people are inherently working hard, is people inherently certain way, is there really actually a choice, a meaningful choice, a consent, and so on and so forth, there are lots of variables at play because decisions, consents, meaning does not happen in a vacuum. As easy as it is for OG to argue that, oh, this will sway the individual's decision making and hence what they assign as meaning, as easy for OO to say, hey, it's also important for these people to assign meaning for them. Look, both sides, agency is compromisable. The debate in principle level is a deadlock. Decision does not come and made in a vacuum. We are going to talk on a much more inherent level. Closing government will talk about how the glorification of success in career manifested in a labor setting, on how this narrative is being used to justify putting structural barrier, putting all labors into fighting each other, into distrusting each other, and hence barring them from actually having their rights fulfilled, barring them from unionize something that the capitalists, the corporates does not want the laborers to do, in favor of these people cutting each other's throat to gain that career success that have been glorified, right? So moving forward, what do we want? We want laborers to unionize. Why? Because rationally speaking, the way for these laborers, regardless of the field, to get what they deserve, to get their success, to get their wealth, to get their career protected, to get their career ladder ensured for them, is for them to unionize and able to negotiate on, at the very least, equal terms with the capital owner. This is what you see in Writers Guild. This is what you see in the Directors Guild, and so forth, right? Because the myth of an individual pushing more work, putting a hard work, and then suddenly poof, success is a myth, unlike what OO wants you to believe. Because an individual cannot topple down the structural barrier like privilege, like the bad capitalism, like how there are lots of threats of like AI replacing these jobs, or for example, the jobs being replaced to other countries with cheaper labors and other stuffs that are inherently designed to be extremely wedged against an individual. That's why the rational decision is for an individual not to work as an individual, but to collectivize. However, the career success, the manifestation of this narrative and the glorification of this narrative always comes in an individualistic way. This is exactly OO's case. Exactly because the career individuals, the career success always highlight the success of an individual. Look, these individuals work hard and therefore can achieve success. Oh, if you want to work hard, only one person can succeed. Only particular persons can, number of persons can succeed, and so on and so forth. Oh, therefore, the manifestation in the labor setting, in the work or office setting, is always an illusion of competition where each and every individual will have to compete with their fellow laborers in a bad way. This is inherent design by the capital owner. And the narrative is their biggest tool to make sure that these laborers still competing with one another, right? The logic here is simple. Because the manipulation created, hence, say for example, some capitalist movie director decided it's a good idea. Hey, look, we hire black actor, we hire black actress. Look, that's why there are no structural barriers. It's if you fail, it's on you. There are no more racism in Hollywood, for example. Turns out it still is. It's still a rampant problem, right? But this career success is being used as an individualistic metric, and hence it literally puts each and every labor competing with each other. For example, bad mouthing your fellow worker, co-worker to your boss, for example, so you can get the promotion instead of them, instead of unionizing, for example. Say for example, say for example, you don't want to, you want to shift the responsibility, shift the blame to, if you do not get those success towards you, for example, as opposed towards the system that is inherent design for everyone, for all the 99% to fail, for example. This is why we oppose this. Perhaps this is not the only metric, sure. Plus, this is not the only tool the capitalists use. The capital owners use to to make sure that their system only benefits them and them only, right? But this is one of the biggest tool, and this reasons alone that the narrative manifested into an illusion of competition to the point in which lots of people are competing against each other instead of unionizing, where they think that unionizing, working with their fellow workers, will harm their chance of getting better wealth, for example, of getting those success in the future, for example. Making an illusion competition is already a big harm enough for us to justify opposing this narrative. And for those reasons, we believe this extensions is quite okay lah. Thank you.
We thank the member for for that speech. To start closing opposition, we call upon the member for the opposition. Here.
Am I audible and visible?
Yeah, you're audible and visible.
Okay. POI preferably from opening, don't ledger, wait.
I think you have to hold your mic a little bit closer to you, because if you move, the audio kind of sways.
Is this okay?
Yep, this is much better.
All right, starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Both government branches have already lost this debate since they cannot even prove why their world is better on the comparative. And if they told you that there will be lots of toxic competitions, we don't see, at the very least on the other side of the house, the way we will win this debate is at the very least more participations on that competition will be manifested on the other side of the house. We close the disparities proud to oppose. Two contributions. Firstly, about contextualization of narratives, because side opening opposition is really lacking on this explanation. And secondly, we'll explain why this glorification will give us a better world to live in. Thus, the contextualization first. So I think what I want to say in here is that people have different approaches in these narratives. There are 4 points to note here. Firstly, one narrative doesn't necessarily mean that people only perceive success only in one career, like what Oji told you. At best, we can see that maybe the success is about money, but how human approaches the money must be different. Secondly, there will be diversification of this narrative. For example, like success in the career of like digital industries of F&Bs, or like white collar workers and stuff. Especially in this digitalized world, the job markets are very, very diverse. You don't always have to be white collar worker, but there are huge discussions to establish your own F&B startups to become TikTok influencers. So irrespective of whatever interest you want to be, at the very least on the other side of the house, at best, our narratives push you to be the best version of the career that you want to pursue. For example, you love to bake, probably like our narratives push you to, for example, to be a successful like bakery owner and stuff. And then thirdly, I like to also bring the status quo contextualization. So I like to frame out OG, since they told you that there are lots of people who want to like preserve their culture or just want to be close with their families, and how these narratives will disrupt their interests. Firstly, mostly they will not be influenced by these narratives panels, because mostly they have been dominantly exposed towards their culture on a day-to-day basis. For example, like Badu people in Bantam will not be exposed towards this glorification, Secondly, but even if it's true, I like to posit, actually with money, you will be able to buy things. For example, the logic is when you become a businessman, people like your workers will work for your money, then you can have more time for your family, because like a lot, like your workers, you own your business, probably you just have to supervise, but you don't have to work 9 to 5 like when you only work on a bare minimum. So that proves to you that actually you can also like preserve your interests at best. So, and then lastly, I'd like to like kill OG's case as well, because they alone told you that people are inherently rational. That means people realize their capacity to reach success. For example, because I am not going to like international school, I'm just going to national curriculum school. I will not have a dream to like have a bachelor degree in Ivy League in the United States of America, although like the Ivy League have been like dominantly glorified in the society. Probably what will this narrative do is that probably it will motivate me in the when I pursue my master's to achieve to like for example like to sign into like Ivy League. That's what the narratives do. It doesn't necessarily mean that you will like literally like opt into drugs and stuff. That with this contextualization, let's move on to our like main contribution, which is like why this glorification is actually needed to provide a better to preserve a better world to live in. So firstly, because birth lottery and the creation of the world, it is very intuitive, but I think we are born unequal. People, for example, like we have geographical differences that allows, for example, like big countries, let's say, to like colonize small countries, let's say. And we told you that everything needs money as well. I think like government benches already conceded to that as well. The implication is that this is the winning principle since the inequality is inevitable at its core and needed money at best. This is the principle. It's about the base of civilization, which is through money and through the glorification of career success. Why? Because one, it's about innovation. The world we're living at its core has been unequal. If you put people only to be like bare minimum only rational in the bare minimum, you will not get any like major benefits. But we told you from the start that disparities actually exist. Then probably, for example, privileged people can just keep their innovations on their own because the career success, like people on the top chain of the job market, let's say, is not being glorified as good people. Is not being glorified as someone that is really really good and inside government. That means it is very hard. That means why do we need additional pressure or like additional glorification? It's about trickle down effect where we pressure, for example, like people who have the like major privileges to leave, like they have capital and stuff, to actually share those benefits to the status quo. That is why, for example, we have good like in the United States. Like they have good technology and research in healthcare. Let's say that is why they can produce like vaccinations for COVID in a fast-paced way. Then secondly, we told you that through this glorification, it's about more diverse working approaches. For example, like developing countries. With this narrative that is very, very competitive, developing countries will be motivated and not just, for example, like like just like stay to be colonized in the past, let's say, and will not have motivation. You will try hard, for example, to achieve that career success, to achieve that independence, let's say, or probably to achieve your own economic model, what type of industries that you want to prioritize as your economic identity. Then secondly, on a micro implication, on a second structural reason, it's about motivation. I think on the other side of the house, we will try to approach on an individual basis in general. So I think what we'll try to say is that through this narrative, although like it's very competitive, firstly it help you to find your passion, because there are lots of influences, let's say like you want to do anything, but because it's very competitive, you will try to strategize your passion to be what you want to say. But secondly, it's about how you can better the working environment, since that means like for one, need more accessible information about career prospects, for example, and better regulations, let's say, because it's a glorification of career success, and like on the comparative is much more better. Yeah, I'll give the POI for CG, please.
Innovation is never within one person's success. It's always a collective of engineers of ideas under your end. Those scientists being tied with career success will keep the secret for themselves.
Yeah, at the very least, we're more faster. When it's glorified, you will have more incentives, not just, for example, capitalistic, but they will try to share it to the world. Then thirdly, third structural reasons about better treatments for disenfranchised communities. While we're talking about minorities who live in urbanized areas, because, for example, like Indonesia's bad government policies in the past that told people, for example, to try to move to other cities to equalize for example, the population, let's say. That means on the other side of the house, we try to like close the disparities, especially in urbanized societies, because we can see that there are lots of minorities as well. For example, like scholarship, for example, the establishment of like public school. But secondly, it's about also push for minorities. And I realized that especially Site Uju told you that, they want to preserve their culture. So in the worst case scenario, at the very least, we tell them that the world isn't beautiful as it is. And at the very least, for example, there will be affirmative approaches for the companies, literally like these proves to you how it incentivizes them to be, for example, kind for minorities, let's say. But thirdly, it is push for developing government, for example. That's why Indonesia has BIM right now. So the weighing is that, firstly, although like the toxic competition exists, at the very least, more participations exist within those competitions. We close the disparities, and secondly, we prove why money is very requisite proud to oppose.
We thank the member for the opposition for that speech. To wrap up governments of the House, we call upon the government. Here, here. Hello, am I audible? Yep, you're audible and visible.
Okay. I'll start my speech in. Oh yeah, my POI person is raising your hand with reaction, and I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. So, ladies and gentlemen, before I start my rebuttal, I want to point out a couple of things about innovation. It became more ridiculous over the time, over the opposition saying that it's like an individual mind. The innovation is never about one individual mind. It's always about the collective of scientists, of engineering, of other people in the society. And we and with the society is not from an individualistic mind. So so that point really contradict and the glorification of success. People do not want to share like knowledge. So they keep their own secret because their meaning is hinged upon success. People think that people think of success is a lot of things, and then it's all just a mess, and incentive companies and nation to provide success to everyone. But it's like contingent upon the benevolence of these companies, and tokenistic will not give it to everyone. Again, like the speaker before, this glorification glorification is it makes you it makes you feel like whatever you're doing is not enough, and eventually you will feel like tired, you feel overwhelmed, you feel burned out, you start sacrificing your loved one or something along the line like that. It is not healthy or helpful with others, people, for you and people around you. And then certain virtue, and then people start thinking about the certain virtue on what they should be, what society think they should be. Like a lot of people are still thinking about not fair, and then they feel like they need to be better than everyone else. And again, when they start thinking of this, they start wanting to compete with their own coworker, making their own coworker thinking like hating on them. They start fighting with each other, talking behind back with the boss, or maybe trying to let them fall by spreading a false rumor. So this glorification of career has a tremendous amount of backlash against people. And then I want to point out again about the about about the about again the if you the opposition success, the opposition just a myth. We said it before. The speaker before me already said it, that we don't have evidence that if you just put effort, that means, yeah, congratulations, you succeed. No, a lot of people, like, they don't try but they became successful, like inherited from their father or something. But not again, if you push yourself and then you don't become successful, it will create another problem. Like you became disappointed, because this glorification also created this mindset about people thinking, yeah, if I just do this, then it will be handy dandy, I will be fine, and I will succeed. But then when they did not reach that goal, they will get disappointed, and then they will have the false mind. They do not again trust society about the problem. It's making high expectation, and then getting that expectation crush because because of the way society work. Again, maybe the crushing expectation is not from it's not only from the individual but the company, that the company only want benefit to themselves and only themselves, and then creating this huge conflict again. And then the speaker before said that if the speaker on the opposition said that if we do not glorify career success, then they'll give up midway. But isn't that just creating, if they just if they succeed in their way, then wouldn't that wouldn't that uh wouldn't that be that they they wasted when they give when we glorified the career success, and then the opposition said if we don't, they'll give up midway, then that means that if we as a speaker, if we as a society can basically said that we can give up on our dreams, on our everything, because we do not have something to push us to think that yes, all of these people are competing, I need to compete. But then when all of that goes, then suddenly you think that no, I guess I'm just gonna give up midway. I don't care about competing anymore. It doesn't work like that. So the opposition think that this is becoming more ridiculous again with the innovation, and then how it is just a individualistic mindset, even though it's a society mindset. So the government think that that glorification of career success should not be implemented in society. That would be.
We thank the government whip for that speech. Last but not least, we call upon the opposition whip. Here.
Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible and visible.
Okay. POI, nyalain video aja ya. Okay, cool. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. I think the first thing that I want to talk about under my speech is what is career success. Why didn't this debate become quite clustered, right? One, we think that career success is not what like what OG mentioned or like what Candy mentioned, that people have different jobs. Some can be influencer and some can be doctor. We think in the current status quo, different success in your job can be defined as number one, you get a good title or good position, for example. But for some other people, they might have different goals, what they mention as successful, right? Some people would like to just get experiences from their job, or number two, some people would like to just make friends and make good connection. And if they have a good connection, they think they're successful in their job. We think it's different towards every individuals. What we don't understand is that CJ mentioned that because there's a glorification, people will be evil, right? They will try to backstab their coworkers and people will just be selfish. Two reasons. One, we think that this is wrong. CJ never mentioned why people will suddenly become so evil and so selfish. We think that what makes work different from debating or other stuff is that you are related to your team, right? You have to work with your team. You have to work with your cost team division as well. For example, if you're an individual salesperson, you have your own target, but you also have a team target in terms of sales. And then what makes it different, right? Even if you want to be successful, you also have the urgency to achieve what your team goals is. So you still have to work with them. So you cannot be selfish. But second of all, we think that to be successful in your work as well, you also need to make a good connection, a good ally, good peers with your people from your office, right? So we think that their assumption that people will eventually be selfish and not want to work with their teammates is eventually baseless, right? So second of all, under my speech, I'm going to explain to you why CO eventually got first in this debate. What Vito mentioned is that people need innovations and how civilization can only progress if there's glorification of career success. Two layers. Number one, what CO mentioned is that in order for civilization to progress, we need people to do their own role based on their capacity. The reason where pharmaceutical companies are able to find new vaccine, for example, new medicine, new innovation on how they find vaccine for COVID, for example, or antiviral treatment for HIV, for SARS, treatment for cancer, is because people work hard and people do their own job to begin with, right? In OG or in CG, when people don't give a damn or people don't give a care about their job on how they will achieve their job, we think that this innovation will not be achievable under their side. Second thing, for example, in terms of technology, on how internet are building the digital, on how people are building digital infrastructure, creating digital payment seamless, for example, or how people in TikTok or Shopee are able to establish digital market that can help SMEs in order to increase people's life standard, is something that will not happen under government because people just don't keep pushing boundaries. But what will happen under OG, right? OG mentioned that people would eventually be left out. Some people will have a low maintenance job, or some people will have a blue collar worker. We think under CO it's okay as well. Undeniably, some people will not be able to work in the big four, but people also have their own role within society. For example, people that are working as labor, building houses, for example, building infrastructure, people that work in a factory, producing mass products, crops, food supply. We think that when they work on their scope, they will also give benefit based on their own scope too. The greater benefit in terms of individuals. The second question under this explanation is that why glorification should exist, right? We think that in CO, people would eventually be lazy if they don't want to, right? We think when it goes to work condition or creating innovation, there's so many obstacles. 3 layers. One, we think there's a fluctuative economic condition, for example, on how war right now is eventually affecting the stock pricing that is quite flaky, for example. Or number two, in a more realistic way, for example, when you're doing a project, sometimes your project meets at that end, for example, your client not cooperative, you don't have enough budget, for example. Or C, when you're trying to do any sort of research, for example, your research is not working, it's not creating any kind of impact, it's not progressing and stuff. So why is this important? Because when there's a hard work condition, which LO only mentioned, there's a market competitiveness. We think that in CO, because it's hard, people need to have more push and initiative in order for them to break the boundaries and find solution in the obstacles that they find in their workforce, right? So why is this important? Because in CO, we explained to you that the gratification is not only about money, it's not only about experience. Whether people are happy or not, we think that people still need to be pushed to do this stuff in order to create a bigger or wider benefit in terms of society. But then let's go to, and that's basically why we think that even if they're happy or not, principally, we think that this will give a greater benefit to humanity. We think that CO should win this debate. Last thing, right? Andre came to this debate quite questionable by saying that right now there's a greedy capitalist system and the workplace, it's not perfect. We're also going to respond to this. One, we think that in order for people to give a damn or see the loopholes within the capitalistic world is that they have to care first about their job, right? The reason why glorification of career success exists is it eventually gives a narrative that people should care about their job. The reason why people want unionize, for example, is because people feel that there's loopholes or eventually uncomfortability within the workforce. Under government side, people will not give a damn because if they think that the work is not okay, they're just gonna quit because they are able to quit under the government side. Under us, we think that there's 3 reasons. Number one, we think that people are rational. I think Randy mentioned this without giving much deeper analysis. We think that people that go to workforce are people that come from 22 years old to 60 years old. We think that these people are those that already mature in terms of their way of thinking. So they will not eventually just follow what society will tell you. Even if Andre mentioned that his parents eventually, tell him to go to work, Andre will eventually be able to create his own decision based on his own ability and his own time. But second of all, for people that might not be, For people that might not be comfortable enough, for example, because people keep talking to them that they have to go to the big four, we think there's also a counter in social media, right? We think that in terms of social media, there's always a counter narrative that you can always do simple living. And for people that eventually anxious and not strong enough to follow this narrative, they can always opt out. What we want to champion in CO is that even when some people opt out, we also need some people that are outstanding and some people that will persevere in order for them to create the innovation that we mentioned about. In terms of workforce, we think there's also a 360 review, for example, every quarter, where you are able to speak to your managers about the stuff that you feel is not okay within your workforce. And we think that this all can only happen if there's a glorification in a work field. Thank you.
We thank the opposition whip for that speech, and that wraps up the debate exhibition for NOVED 2023. Thank you to all of the speakers.